15 from behind and 50 from the front. I mean, it just went on and on and on. And again, as I say, these ways where very unexpected things happen very unexpectedly. I had actually gone to a conference in New York, and I remember, I thought, oh, I'll just look up what A.A. Gill said, because everybody reads A.A. Gill's reviews. And so I got my laptop out, and I thought, blimey, it's sort of, it really, it was a fully frontal attack. And it was when I first got followers on Twitter, I suddenly realised people started following me on Twitter because they'd seen A.A. Gill. What was interesting about it, and I think it turned out to be, from a feminist point of view, quite important, that almost the whole, not entire, I mean, there were some people who I'm sure agreed with Gill, but most of the British press and commentators said that that was absolutely wrong, out of order. They'd enjoyed the programmes. It was about as sexist as you could get. Interestingly, even the most notorious newspaper in Britain, I don't know if you've heard of the Daily Mail. The Daily Mail is what sets the British agenda. The Daily Mail is why we have left the EU or about to leave the EU. The Daily Mail is often the source of bad for the British nation. In this case, the Daily Mail was pretty supportive of me. They got me to write an article. The comments under the line were very supportive. And why I think they were was because the Daily Mail's demographic is actually women my age. And one of the things that I think really went down well was me saying, how do you think, I was then 55, how do you think a woman in her 50s actually looks? Suppose, let's assume she hasn't had cosmetic surgery, she hasn't had all the load of work done. What do you think a woman in her mid-50s looks like? Because they look like me, actually. And I'm pretty certain that many of these, actually quite well-meaning, I think, readers of this terrible newspaper, for which I have to say I sometimes write, let me confess, not that terrible. They thought, that's right, that man, is telling us not to be seen. He's telling us he doesn't want to look at us because we haven't done our hair, we're grey, we're probably a bit overweight, and we haven't done our teeth fixed, we haven't got a perfect smile. So, in some ways, it had, I think, a very paradoxical good effect, a paradoxically good effect on the A.A. Gill effect on British documentary. I think it's been easier for women like me to get on. It also, I think, had the effect that it made me much more a figure of public attention. Because I suspect that without Gill's attack, but I think these documentaries are good. I feel very pleased that I've made them. I'm sure some people don't like them, but I look at them and I'm happy with them, and I would have been proud to have made them, and they would have been successful. But they also gained a certain celebrity because of the appearance, the unusual appearance of the presenter. Which made me recognisable.
No sé si per culpa o gràcies a aquest crític la gent la segueix, vostè a Twitter li diuen moltes coses, a vegades l'ataquen i vostè diu que és important contestar, perquè si no d'alguna manera el que estan aconseguint és silenciar-te, no? Que és el que volen.
Yeah, I think Twitter is a very interesting arena for exploring women's voices. Partly 140 characters becomes a magnifying glass on, absolute assumptions about women, or not only women, but almost anything Twitter decides to look at. Now, I want to preface this by saying I don't think Twitter has made people worse. I think the views that you see on Twitter were there all along. You just didn't notice them because they happened where you didn't see them. Now we see them. And I think there's two things that are very interesting. One is, although there are some different studies recently, by and large it seems fairly clear that women are much more target of abuse on Twitter than men. Men sometimes have done some nice experiments. They've chosen apparently female Twitter handle, and they suddenly find they get abused quite differently and more frequently. And I think it's also, if you look, you look at the this very telegraphic language, you find that in some ways it goes right back to Telemachus. Often, not always, but often what the people who really abuse you on Twitter object to is not actually what you are saying, sometimes they do, it is that you are opening your mouth. I mean, so they say things like, "Shut up, bitch." Or, that's the nice version. Or they say, "I'm going to come and cut your tongue out." Right? Slightly less nice, they get worse. What's interesting about those, in some ways it seems faintly silly analysing these, but I think they aim at women's capacity to speak, not at the argument. But, by and large, I think there's some very nasty people behind this. Mostly, I think they're sad loners who are sitting up at night, probably still blokes still living with their mum, when they're far too old and have no life at all, and their only life is tapping away at their laptops, right? I don't really think they need to be in prison. I think they just need to get a life. Almost as bad, not as bad, but almost as bad is the supportive reaction that you get. Because you're almost always told that you should not pay any attention to them, you should block them, and you should certainly not reply, because that is only feeding them with the publicity that they want. To start with, I believe this, but after a bit, I came to think, look, this is just shutting me up another way. Here I am, I'm a woman, someone has abused me, claimed that I've said things I've never said, wildly factually inaccurate, and what do you expect me to do? Shut up! This again is back to Penelope and Telemachus. If you dare open your mouth to object, you've just encouraged them. Well, sorry, they've encouraged themselves. And I think on Twitter, I now have two rules about response. I think that it's absolutely essential to remain, even if you don't believe it, really polite. I'm terribly sorry. I think you'll find, if you look, that I didn't exactly say that. Right? Because politeness is a really nasty word. Actually, they've just ranted, "You stupid bitch, I think you deserve to be raped." You say, "I'm terribly sorry, I think they look very silly. But also, I think, you have to draw the line somewhere. So I think there are people who are capable of, tweeting you 40 times an hour. And at this point, you say, "I am going to respond. I'm going to target my response, I'm not going to shut up, but I'm not letting this guy take over my life. Because otherwise, I'd be tweeting him back 40 times an hour." So I respond, I'm polite, and at a certain point, when it has become utterly fruitless, draw the line. Sometimes it does become fruitless. You'd be surprised how often, it's not the majority of times, but it's reassuringly often, those guys, and some trollers are women, but not many, some are. It's reassuringly often one will say, "I'm terribly sorry, I didn't really read what you'd said and I got it wrong." And every time you get one of those, you think, it's a victory. Actually, and you say, "Thank you so much for saying it," and you put like.
Són